Hello, my name is Susan Blacklin. I'm the author of Water Confidential, Witnessing Justice Denied, about the fight for safe drinking water in Indigenous and rural communities in Canada, and also Water Justice, What You Don't Know Could Kill You, released a couple of months ago in spring of 2026. I'd like to talk to you today about the Constitution. My title is The Constitution is Not the Problem. Political will is the problem. Across Canada, tens of thousands of kilometers of aging asbestos cement water pipes are being abandoned in place, removed by unlicensed contractors, and handed by day laborers with no protective equipment and no understanding of the health risks involved. Pesticides are passing through water treatment plants and arriving in tap water. And the federal government has just eliminated the last mechanism designed to catch these dangerous chemicals before they reach your glass. Every level of government looks the other way and then points at every other level to explain why it isn't their problem. Provinces boast weak and varied drinking water guidelines with no substance. Canada doesn't even have a laboratory capable of testing for asbestos. Not that that is really relevant, as asbestos levels are not even included in Health Canada's National Drinking Water Guidelines. When pressed, legal scholars blame the Constitution as the reason why we can't demand national drinking water regulations. It is time to call them out for what it is. It is also a sophisticated way of maintaining a system that has produced asbestos fibers in tap water, toxic waste sites beneath residential streets, and potentially 5 million Canadians drinking water delivered via asbestos cement pipes. Infrastructure nobody is required to test, map, or replace on any legislated timeline. Every other G7 nation has found a way to establish legally enforceable national drinking water regulations. The United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Italy, Japan, all of them. Canada alone has not. The Constitution did not stop any of them, and it is not stopping Canada either. Consider the logic the federal government applies everywhere else. Federally regulated industries are those whose operations cross provincial or international boundaries. Air transport, telecommunications, banking. The Carney government just rushed through sweeping changes to Canada's labour laws on precisely that basis, giving stakeholders 30 days to respond to changes affecting over 1 million workers. When Ottawa wants to act, it finds the constitutional authority to do so. Water crosses every boundary this country has drawn. Rivers do not stop at provincial borders. PFAS from Federal Research Facility in Mississippi Mills migrated through groundwater towards a residential community, regardless of which order of government owned the pipe. Burrard Inlet does not distinguish between Indigenous territory and the city of Vancouver. If crossing boundaries establishes federal jurisdiction, water qualifies more completely than any bank or airline ever has. The federal government also holds direct constitutional authority over Indigenous lands under Section 91(24), and within that undisputed jurisdiction has presided over one of Canada's most significant environmental justice failures. Long-term boil water advisories, crumbling infrastructure, and the Canada Water Agency, founded on the explicit premise that it would not address drinking water on reserves. The Constitution was not the obstacle there either. Lack of political will was. The National Research Council, a federal body, conducted $35 million worth of research documenting that ingested asbestos fibers potentially cause cancer, that deteriorating asbestos cement pipes release those fibers into drinking water, and that communities face real risk of malignant tumors of the gastrointestinal tract and other organs. That research disappeared when the NRC closed its program and closed its doors. It resurfaced. It has been ignored. Health Canada continued to claim insufficient evidence of harm, position the NOC's own buried research directly contradicts, and one that no constitutional argument can justify. The Egan versus National Research Council decision has now established what silence costs. A court certified $2 million in punitive damages solely because the NRC sat on contamination evidence and failed to warn a residential community. The legal principle is unambiguous. Any organization that knows or ought to know that contamination is reaching drinking water has an immediate duty to disclose. Australia has classified abandoned asbestos cement pipes as toxic waste requiring full removal. Canada classifies the same material as nobody's immediate problem. Now add pesticides because the Carney government just made everything worse. Mandatory safety reviews for dangerous pesticides were eliminated. Those reviews existed to ensure pesticides continued meeting health and environmental standards as new science emerges. Without them, unsafe products remain on the market indefinitely. That proposal is now law, buried in a budget bill, passed without committee review or public debate. A landmark study of the Chateauguay River found at least 50 different pesticides and their breakdown products in treated tap water in the heart of Montreal, sometimes in higher concentrations than in the source water before treatment. The most prevalent was glyphosate, classified by the World Health Organization as a probable human carcinogen in 2015. That is one river in one province. We have hundreds of water treatment systems across this country, and few are capable of removing the PFAS, PFAS, pharmaceuticals, and pesticides, etc. These compounds do not sit politely in your glass. They interact, amplify, and multiply each other's toxicity. Europe set a total allowable limit for combined pesticides in drinking water decades ago. Canada lists each one separately, producing limits that look acceptable in isolation and would breach European standards the moment you add them together. Health Canada are doing accounting tricks that benefit the pesticide industry and no one else. Products Health Canada itself has flagged as unsafe can now be authorized by members of Parliament on economic grounds alone. Broward Inlet was contaminated by 700 different pollutants over 4 decades, while regulators looked elsewhere. Monsanto was criminally prosecuted in the United States for knowingly exposing people to banned pesticides. These are not hypothetical risks. They are the documented consequences of exactly the kind of regulatory abdication Canada has just made permanent. The pesticide reevaluation process must be reinstated immediately. The 5-year renewal process must be restored. Cabinet must be stripped of the power to override Health Canada's safety determinations. Canada must adopt cumulative pesticide limits consistent with European standards. Every asbestos cement pipe must be mapped, tested, and replaced on a legislated timeline by licensed contractors. The federal government must disclose to communities what its own research has shown for years. The Walkerton tragedy produced sweeping provincial legislation in Ontario within years of 7 people dying. One might reasonably ask why it did not produce national drinking water standards. The asbestos cement pipe crisis, the pesticide crisis, the ongoing crisis of drinking water in Indigenous communities, none of it has produced that national moment of reckoning, not yet. The Constitution is not stopping anyone from acting. It does not prevent the federal government from mapping every asbestos cement pipe in Canada, from requiring licensed contractors, from mandating water testing, from enforcing removal of asbestos cement water pipes in accordance with asbestos legislation, or from disclosing what its own research has known for decades. from establishing legally enforceable government agencies. It does not prevent Canada from joining every other G7 nation in setting enforceable national drinking water standards, or better still, regulations. It never did. What is stopping action is the same thing that kept too many First Nation communities on boil water advisories for decades. It is not the Constitution. It is the absence of political will dressed in legal language sophisticated enough to make that absence look inevitable. Recently, the Carney government reminded us exactly how that logic works when Ottawa wants to act. Rushing through changes to Canada's labour laws, the government invoked a simple principle. Federally regulated industries are those whose operations cross provincial or international boundaries, like air transport, telecommunications, and banking. Water crosses every provincial and international boundary this country has. It does not pause at a municipal border, a reserve boundary, or a provincial line. It flows where geology and gravity take it, carrying with it whatever we have put into it: sewage, pesticides, asbestos fibers, pharmaceuticals, PFAS, indifferent to which order of government is responsible for the pipe it travels through. If that principle justifies federal jurisdiction over airlines and banks, it justifies federal jurisdiction over water. Not someday, not after further intergovernmental negotiations, but now. The Constitution is not the obstacle. It never was. Canada is simply the only G7 nation that has not chosen to govern its drinking water as though it were a local matter or a profitable resource. I invite you to sign and share the open letter writing campaign to Prime Minister Carney and the federal government, asking government to protect our water, protect our health, hosted by the National Council of Women. Please visit NCWC Open Letter. Please share this podcast and other links to videos here on Water Action Canada. Nothing is going to change until enough people stand up and say enough is enough. Thank you for listening.